on YouTube channel, Jay. Let's go!
Hello again, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of the Good Friends, Better Enemies podcast. And welcome to episode 1 of season 2. For those of you listening and our frequent listeners of the podcast, last week we waxed nostalgic about the year previous, and we corrected some booking to put Bret Hart back into our multiverse here on Good Friends, Better Enemies. And we are delighted to come back to you with season 2, episode 1. And my friend, dear close personal, longtime friend Tyrone is in the driver's seat this week. Tyrone, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, I may be in the driver's seat, but it'll probably end up as a goddamn car wreck given this stupid pay-per-view. But I'm okay. Yeah, you know what? I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you? How are things going on your side of the GTA over there? Everything kosher? Everything fun? Christmas music blaring in your head yet?
Not as of yet. All is good here. Just working away, as we all are, and starting to get to some semblance of normalcy. The pandemic, I think, in a lot of people's minds, is in a bit of the rearview mirror at this point. I'm still cautiously optimistic, still taking my time with things and trying to adhere to mask wearing and sanitizing and all that kind of thing. But life is starting to get to a little bit of normalcy, and which is indicative, I think, of what's going on right now. The Christmas season, we're all starting to get a little busier. I'm sure with you right now in the hospitality business, you are getting busier by the day. And of course, I think all across retail, they are just getting ready for the busiest time of the year, perhaps the busiest in the last several with lockdowns and things of that nature. So things are good, but busy. How about you, man?
Yeah, about the same. You nailed it right on the head there, man. We're getting busier and busier as the days go on. And if I can just shout out a little PSA there to everybody listening, nobody in the restaurant industry or the retail industry wants to hear you talk about Christmas music, guys. We're forced to listen to it for at least 8 hours a day, every single day. We don't enjoy it. We don't enjoy watching you get drunk and sing Jingle Bell Rock all around the entire building. So how about don't do it. We don't bring it up. We don't do anything like that. Okay, guys? Fuck Bing Crosby for everything that you did.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with Bing Crosby, but I'm more of a Sinatra man myself anyways. Be that as it may, this week we are covering, as is a bit of a coined phrase on this podcast, a humdinger. We are covering WCW World Championship Wrestling's offering of the second installment of World War III. The tagline being 60 men, 3 rings, 1 battle royal, total destruction. Now, this came to us live on November 24th, 1996 from the Norfolk Scope in Norfolk, Virginia, with an attendance of 10,314. Now, this particular event was not my favorite, Tyrone. And I think we were talking a little bit off air over the last couple of days, as well as just right before we hit record. It wasn't so much the event, it was the concept of the event. I kind of feel like this is in the same vein for me as that Greatest Royal Rumble where we had the 50-man over-the-top rope Royal Rumble. It's great as a one-off, but I don't want to see this yearly. This would have been fun maybe as a one-time gimmick event for WCW, but I certainly didn't need to see this for 3 years.
4 years, actually, somehow. But I completely agree with you. At least with the Greatest Royal Rumble 50-man blood money world championship that they had over there, at least you weren't getting 50 of them in the ring at the same time, although I do think that happened on another one of their shows. But that's the convoluted bullshit that was WCW at this time, was they were doing so many good things, so many great things, and all of a sudden they decide, you know what would be great? Let's take 3 rings, not even put them side by side, but kind of in like a crooked little triangle pattern, have 60 guys in there, have fucking 2 or 3 different commentators on each ring talking over each other while we see who we still have employed. Like, Jesus Christ, did anybody really think that Pez Whatley was going to win this thing? Absolutely not. Does anybody even really know who Pez Whatley is? Maybe if you were born between or before 1985, you might. But yeah, This is terrible. I know you and I have spoken about gimmick matches and how there is a time and a place. I know you personally are not the biggest fan of the yearly Elimination Chamber Hell in a Cell pay-per-views and think that they should just be brought out for blow-offs, which I completely agree with. But I'm sorry, this may be the absolute worst yearly tradition gimmick match that they ever had. Also, the name. Every year it was called World War III. Why didn't we call it World War III, World War IV, World War V? Why was it always the same fucking title? I am already fired up about this stupid show, and we haven't even really gotten to it. But yeah, I hated it. Yeah, I had to sit down, take notes, watch every stupid piece of shit that they put on this, with a couple of good things, but we'll get to that later. Dumbest gimmick match ever.
Well, just be grateful that you didn't spend the $29.95 to watch it live back in '96. I mean, if you look at the two events that
There's
were
no way
going
in there's no way in hell I ever would have. Plain and simple.
no chance. And I mean, if you look at the two events that were put on by the major companies, you had this, and then you had Survivor Series 1996, which, spoiler alert, folks, are, pulling the curtain back a little bit. We just had a group chat in regards to Survivor Series and what is the greatest of all time with myself and Tyrone and Mike and Tyler. We have a group chat under the Counted Out umbrella, and I was really quite visceral in my opinion that Survivor Series 96 is the greatest of all time. Be that as it may, I don't want to get into a discussion about that right now, but I'm just saying that you go from what they were presenting on the opposite channel to what they're presenting here. And it's funny because, week after week, Nitro was beating Raw. So it's very interesting to see the dynamic. If you look at this concept, and I 100% agree with you, what do you think about the multi-ring concept? Because some people absolutely love war games. They look back on it as one of the greatest gimmicks ever. There was some certainly classic matches back in the 80s, and then going into some of the years of the 90s were pretty good as well. Certainly not 98. But if you look at war games as a multi-ring concept, that one seemed to work fairly well. What do you think the difference was here in terms of, was it the cage? Was it the way that they set it up? Was it the fact that they had angles and storylines and stakes built into the War Games event? Whereas with this particular match, it was kind of just there. What do you think is the difference? What's the secret sauce here?
Pretty much a combination of everything you just said. I actually enjoy the War Games presentation. I like it because, yeah, it's two rings, which already two is better than three. We've proven that with Monday Night Raw over the last few years. Sorry, had to get a jab in there. But yes, with the cage over top of it, the rings are actually kind of connected with that steel barrier in the middle, unlike these three that were just in a weird triangular diamond form. The cage, the fact that there's not 60 different people in there at the same time, you start off with two and one more enters every 5 minutes. That's fine. You can still keep track of everything that's going on. Yes, there have been some terrible War Games matches, but has there been a good World War III match?
No, not to my knowledge. I haven't sat and watched all of them, to be perfectly honest, but I can't imagine that there would be. Battle Royals are some of the most boring matches you'll ever see. The Royal Rumble's different because you get the entrance coming in and you get the surprises, you get the anticipation with the theme songs and the countdown. It's a really dramatic kind of device to get people invested into the show, and that's one of the reasons why I think so many people tout the Rumble as their favorite event of the year. Whereas with this, it was just watching 60 guys, I guess 20 guys per ring, just kind of phoning it in, for the lack of a better term. So, yeah, your point is well taken. I will say about the War Games, though, from my perspective, I know that there was a lot of controversy when they brought it back for NXT. And a lot of people were saying, oh, there's no top to the cage. There's no this, there's no that. And I think I was one of those people in the beginning that said, yeah, they need to keep it the way it was. But as the years have progressed, I kind of think it's better without the roof on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm indifferent, to be perfectly honest with you. I like it with, I like it without. I mean, when you think of the the accidents that can happen with a roof on the cage. All you have to do is go back and watch. I believe it was in 91 or 92 when Brian Pillman got his head almost decapitated by Sid on a botched power bomb. But again, that should have been them knowing themselves that they can't do that spot. But then you look at it without the roof, and you look at the more recent ones, and you have somebody like an Io Shirai jumping off the top and doing something crazy, or I think it was one of the War Raiders did something insane a couple years ago. You had fucking Pat McAfee in there a year or two ago, actually lighting it up. Like, I guess lately you don't need the roof because they're putting on a stellar show without it. It's already been blown off by the crowd, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, I think that for the purposes of today's product and the type of competitors that are involved with the War Games, especially in NXT, it warrants not having the roof. Whereas back in the 80s, when you had, guys like the Horsemen and the Road Warriors, Dusty and people of that ilk, that I don't think you really necessarily needed to have the roof off the cage because, well, they weren't going to be doing high spots like that anyway. So it kind of evolved with the times, which makes a lot of sense to me. But moving forward into 1996 here in WCW, so obviously, in July, we had the formation of the NWO, Hogan, Hall, and Nash, and they've been running roughshod over the promotion. Some of the most compelling nitros that you'll see are during this infancy stage of the NWO as they were running weekly through different talent top stars, the Stings, the Lugers, the Macho Mans, the Giants and people of that sort. So as we move along through into the fall of 1996, we're going to see Roddy Piper return at the end of, I believe it was the end of Halloween Havoc or shortly there in and around. And he would be signing a contract to compete with Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, at Starrcade that year, which took place in Nashville. Now, I know that a lot of people think that at this point in 96, the Hogan and Piper feud was a little long in the tooth. But personally, I think this was a smart move to have Piper come in. I mean, obviously, spoiler alert, it was 25 years ago, folks. Piper won that match at Starrcade with the sleeper clean. So he did finally get that big win on Hogan. But I thought it was a smart move to bring Piper in and reignite that feud with Piper kind of being, the one-man band, no pun intended, to Heath Slater, but at the same time kind of pseudo representing WCW. What do you think of that creative? Was it good for you, or do you think it was just too little too late?
It was terrible. It was fine. Like, okay, maybe it wasn't terrible, but I'm of the belief that it's just WCW doing what they did at that time, which was re-signing old WWF guys, putting them up against Hogan again, trying to make the magic happen 10 years later that happened in the 80s. And some of it worked. This one was all right. You look at the Warrior a year or two later, absolutely atrocious. But I just look at it as in 1996, they had a roster of so many younger, hungry, talented people that they could have made superstars out of, but instead they kept bringing back the old timers. I've just never been a fan of that. We've talked about that, about current product with people and whatnot too, but it's just weird. Like, as I'm saying this, there was 11-year gap between Mania 1 and this, 11 and a half years. 11 and a half years ago, we'd still be watching John Cena and Randy Orton in the main event. So it's a different time, but also the same time. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of bringing Piper in. He was fine. He was playing the icon. He was leading WCW, but he's not a WCW guy. You're going to have somebody lead WCW. To me, it always should have been Sting, Luger, or Flair, or fuck, I had another one there, and it just completely escaped my mind. But that's who should be doing it. It should not be the WWF built stars that are going elsewhere.
No, I agree with you to an extent. I think in my mind, while I agree with a lot of what you're saying, I do think that Piper's, that is, his return fit for the time period that we were looking at in terms of the development of the NWO. I don't know necessarily if we were ready to see Sting and Hollywood Hogan in 96. We did see Luger the year later in 97 in August of 97. I don't think that there was necessarily anybody on the roster in WCW at this time in 96 in terms of a very young talent that was maybe ready to be put in that spot. We needed to build some guys to that spot, which did happen eventually. But I do think that at this particular time, it kind of made sense because he'd already gone through Flair at this point, Hogan had. And so why not bring in Piper? It wasn't going to be that long of a feud. I mean, we would see the rematch at Super Brawl. And then, of course, we would see it one more time. It's called Age in a Cage at Halloween Havoc 97, which was absolutely awful. But this match here at Starrcade actually was quite good. And I thought that if you look at the year that Piper had, he had the Hollywood Backlot Brawl with Goldust at WrestleMania 12. Then he caps off the year with Hogan at Starrcade. That's a pretty good run for Piper in 96.
Yeah, sure. It's not a terrible year and terrible run. The Hollywood Backlot Brawl was fun for what it was, but I'm just saying they could have been elevating new stars at this point. They could have done it all year. We're going to get to the rebooking of the Battle Royal later, and you know me, I like to throw curveballs in there, especially when there's a title shot up for grabs. So who knows? Maybe I'm elevating a younger star so that they don't have to.
No, I'm all for that. I completely understand your point, and I'm right there on board with it. I do agree with it. I just don't see anybody that was maybe ready to take that spot at this point in 96. Be that as it may, we are going to go into the booking of this particular card. As we alluded to, the NWO is hot and fresh off the press, just starting and forming in July of 96. So now we're on to November. They're really starting to gain some traction. They're running roughshod over the company. And that kind of brings us to where we are with WCW 1996 and kind of towards going into 1997. We have a very, very interesting card here. I mean, it's sort of shadowing or foreshadowing some of the events that we would see going into 97, but there's also a lot of gimmicky stuff on this card. So without further ado, Tyrone, are you ready to get into this sucker?
I'm ready to get out of it more so than into it right now, but yeah, let's do it.
All right, what the heck? Why not? It's ready to go here. I'm just curious, are you doing a dark match or are we skipping over that?
There is no dark match, but I will start off by saying I switched up the commentator location because throughout this show, there are multiple angles of people wrestling on the floor, and all you see is Dusty Rhodes' big fucking red leather jacket from behind sitting ringside, and I found it so distracting. So I implemented what WCW would do going forward with a lot of their shows, and they're now up near the aisle, up near the ramp. It's the same commentators. I'm not putting 10 goddamn people on the call for the main event. It is just Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, Dusty Rhodes. That is it.
That sounds good to me. I mean, you could just have them like they do with commentary, they were doing in the WWF. I don't know if they were doing it in WCW at the time as well. Just call what's on the screen. Call what you see. So that way you don't have to have different commentators. But I guess, yeah, no, that would make sense. If you have cameras all throughout, you can just cut from feed to feed and then just call that. So I don't know why we needed 3 different announce teams. I'm completely with you on that.
No more Mark Madden. That is all I have to say about that.
So our opening contest on this pay-per-view is for the J Crown Championship and is a singles contest with the Ultimo Dragon, the champion, accompanied by Sonny Ono, defeating Rey Mysterio Jr. What do you have for me, bud?
Well, in typical WCW fashion, we are going to start this event off with a Mean Gene interview in the aisleway. Because it wouldn't be a pay-per-view in WCW if we didn't waste 20 minutes talking to somebody. So out comes the Nature Boy Ric Flair, arm in a sling. At this time, Flair was the United States champion. So he is out there to announce that he is to vacate the title, and they are going to start an 8-man elimination tournament tonight. If you were familiar with this era, they actually started an 8-man tournament on Monday Nitro the next day, but I thought there's so much that doesn't need to be on this card. Let's take some of that off. Let's put some of these tournament matches on there. So our opening contest of World War III, 1996, is a first round match for the United States Championship Tournament, and it is Conan going one-on-one with Eddie Guerrero.
Very interesting. You are going for it, man. Like this pay-per-view now is gimmick War 3. I mean, you got a tournament, you got a Rumble match or a Battle Royal match. I'm waiting for maybe a Texas Death Match, hopefully at some point on this card. I don't hate this idea of doing this tournament. Are you doing the whole tournament tonight? Is it a one-night tournament, or are we doing it like throughout the weeks leading up to say Starrcade?
I'm doing the first round tonight. The rest of it will be led up to Starrcade. But I'm only doing that because I'm also going to let everyone know right now the contract signing between Piper and Hogan does not exist on my card. That is going to happen on Nitro the next night. So essentially, I'm just doing a flip-flop.
No, that makes all the sense in the world to me. So Eddie Guerrero versus Conan. Talk me through the match, man. How do we get there?
It's a pretty quick match between two luchador legends, with it being pretty even back and forth. Eddie looks like he's going to hit the win when Jimmy Hart and the Faces of Fear and the Dungeons of Doom come out and they knock Eddie off the top rope. Conan hits the Tequila Sunrise. 1, 2, 3. Conan is now into the second round.
Interesting choice. I thought you were going to go with Eddie for sure, but I'm always up for a submission win, and I like the idea of hitting that Tequila Sunrise. Yeah, I'm all for that. Makes sense to me. I mean, if you're going to do the tournament here on the pay-per-view, sure. Let's give Conan the rub here a bit. Sounds good to me, bud.
Yeah, and it's World War III. You're probably going to see most of these guys again later, so who knows? Maybe we're going to rekindle some things and keep some storylines going. Stay tuned, kids.
I like it. So the next match on our card is supposed to be Chris Jericho with Teddy Long going one-on-one with referee Nick Patrick, and Jericho had one arm tied behind his back. Watching this match, I wish I had a blindfold tied behind my head. So what do you have for me on this one?
Well, the next match on the card is for the Super J Championship, and it is the Ultimo Dragon and Rey Mysterio. That match that opened the original show was so damn good. I kept it. Nothing is changing. Same Dragon win, same Dragon time. Everything's beautiful. We're just going to keep that one there. I don't think it needed to be changed at all.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll give you that. I mean, it was a really, really good match. So interesting that you chose to put it on second as opposed to first. I thought that match was a really good way to get the crowd up off their feet, especially because you always had that 10 minutes of recap and commentary before we even got a match in the ring so often with pay-per-views. But
hear me out here. You started off with Flair vacating the title, and then you got to go into a tournament match pretty much right away, so it's fresh in people's minds. People are already a little bummed out about Flair not being able to compete there. Also about Conan, the heel, going over. So now you bring him back with some fun luchador wrestling by that wonderful Japanese luchador, the Ultimate Dragon.
I like it. I said Ultimo, didn't I? Yeah, I meant to say Ultimate. No, you're right.
He is Ultimo Dragon anywhere else, but on this pay-per-view and some other WCW ones, he's Ultimate Dragon, which drove me insane.
Yeah. I don't understand why you're changing the verbiage there. Everybody knows him as Ultimo Dragon. So anyhow, no, that makes sense. Yeah, keep it on the card. I like that you kept it. It reeks of WCW Cruiserweight, which is huge. That's one of the reasons why Nitro got put on the map so strongly, I firmly believe, is because of the luchadors. So for me, that makes all the sense in the world to keep that on the card.
Now, just because my card is so much different than what you have in front of you, do you want me to just kind of go match by match without you leading on what would have been the next one?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, well, next up, we have another first-round matchup for the United States Championship Tournament, and we have the dog-faced gremlin, Rick Steiner, going one-on-one with Big Bubba Rogers.
You know what? I'm fine with this. I like the idea of getting Big Bubba Rogers on the pay-per-view. And I also like the idea of Rick Steiner's in a singles here in 1996. So I'm all for this. How did you book it?
So we're planting seeds of Big Bubba joining the NWO because he would do that very, very shortly after this. And with the whole Sting, what's he doing? What's he not doing right now? Because we had NWO Sting showing up when real Sting wasn't there. Middle of the match, doesn't a Sting come down, hit Rick Steiner with a baseball bat? Big Bubba just rolls him up, gets the win thanks to the interference from quote unquote Sting.
Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Okay, so the next matchup then in the tournament would be Conan and Big Bubba Rogers.
Yeah, that's a barn burner right there for you, isn't it, bud?
It's different. I will give you that. I don't hate it though. I don't hate it. I mean, yeah, I could see those styles kind of meshing pretty well. It'd be a bit of a brawl for me, I think, but it wouldn't be a real technical masterpiece, obviously, but not without its merits. So yeah, I think you're doing pretty good with this card so far. I can't think of it getting any worse, really. So you had to go up, I think, in terms of your booking there this week. So yeah, good on you, man. I'm fine with that.
Well, I mean, if you want it to get worse, it's about to get a little worse. Because the next matchup on the card is scheduled for one fall, and it is Lionheart, Chris Jericho, accompanied to the ring by his good old manager, Teddy Long. I'm not going to lie, Jay, I totally forgot that was even a pairing. Going one-on-one with the one, the only, representing the NWO, Vincent.
Why? Why would you book this match?
Okay, so there's that weird storyline happening right now with Jericho and the NWO where he can't beat them, and because Nick Patrick is the crooked referee and helping out the NWO, we're just going to feed Vincent to him. And I'm going to give Vincent the win after Nick Patrick interferes after the original referee is knocked down. Nick Patrick runs out, gives Jericho a low blow, lets Vincent roll him up and counts a super 3 count, and Vincent gets a pay-per-view victory over Chris Jericho. What? Mike Jones beating Chris Jericho? Y'all never saw that one coming, did you?
No, I definitely didn't. I mean, I feel like maybe you're writing an episode of WCW Saturday Night as opposed to World War III, but very, very questionable booking here for you to put Vincent on the pay-per-view. No knock on Vincent. He wasn't that bad a worker and all that kind of thing. Like, I don't have anything bad to say about the guy, but I don't know. It's kind of, I guess it's better than Nick Patrick, so I'll give you that at least.
Well,
but...
and that's it. If you want to put Jericho up against an NWO member right now, who else is going to make much sense other than potentially Six-Pac? You're not going to do it with Hall. You're not going to do it with Nash. You're not going to do it with Giant. That was the NWO at the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's when it was at its kind of best as well, as when we were smaller. Even, I think even maybe the Giant was probably the peak in terms of the amount of people that they had in it. It wouldn't be too long from now before we would have 15 limousines pulling up at the beginning of Nitro. It would take us half an hour just to get everybody into the arena for the promo. We probably could have used 3 rings at one point just for an NWO sighting on Nitro.
It was the next week on Nitro. So the next night where Bischoff came out and told the entire WCW locker room they had an ultimatum. Either terminate their WCW contracts and join the NWO or get the shit kicked out of them, essentially. And then right away, Bagwell and Riggs came out, and Bagwell just joined the NWO. That was how that happened.
Yeah, he had a pretty decent run with the NWO, though. Bagwell was one of those guys that did fairly well by being associated with the NWO. There were some guys that got the rub from it. I think Bagwell was one of them. And there are other guys that just were completely lost in the shuffle, like a Stevie Ray, for example. Like, what was the purpose of having him in the NWO? Just because you needed to break up the Harlem Heat? I saw no.
I would say if we're talking people who got the rub from the NWO, it would definitely be Bagwell and probably Conan in my eyes, who definitely got the best from it. And if you want to talk the worst, Horace Hogan and maybe Scott Norton.
Yeah, I always liked Scott Norton so much. I never understood why he didn't get a run in the Fed. I think probably because he was making more money in Japan by the time they closed. But I mean, he was a workhorse. I loved Norton's matches. I loved his gimmick. He looked like a badass. He looked like one of those guys that you just know, even you know it's a work. You just don't want to screw with a guy like Scott Norton in my eyes.
Fuck no, he's a brick shithouse. I would not even want to like go up and jokingly pat him on the back. I'd feel like he'd throw me off a balcony somewhere.
I'll bet he's the nicest guy in the world, though. I've heard he's a very nice guy, so he's probably like a gentle giant. Be that as it may, yeah, Jericho versus Vincent. I mean, as I said, it's better than Nick Patrick. I like that Jericho was getting a pay-per-view match here in '96. The fact that he was going up against Nick Patrick meant that they had built up a storyline involving him, so that's good. And if we're going to continue along this NWO path, so where do you see this going now? Is Jericho then going to face Patrick at Starrcade?
I mean, if you're going to do a gimmick match like that, Starrcade seems like the place because it is their WrestleMania. So why not?
Yeah, I suppose so. So anyhow, yeah, I'm okay with it. I mean, it's not my favorite booking, but it's better than what we got. So I'll give you a give you a pass on that one.
Hell, maybe we do a mixed tag and you do Vincent and Nick Patrick versus Teddy Long and Chris Jericho.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you keep those creative juices flowing, pal. I like where your head's at here with these mixed tags. How is it a mixed tag, by the way?
I don't know. How are half of the mixed tags? How is Doink and Dink a mixed tag at WrestleMania 10? You call it a mixed tag and you know that it can only be the wrestler against the wrestler and the referee against the manager, I guess.
They should call it like a tag and a half match, maybe.
Okay. Anyway, on to the next one.
The next yeah,
next
you're sorry. I forgot you're taking the lead here. I'm not going. I'm not dictating the pace here anymore.
All good, baby. The next match on the card is a 6-person intergender mixed tag matchup with the Harlem. I'm not even lying. With the Harlem Heat and Sister Sherry taking on the amazing French Canadians and Colonel Robert Parker.
Okay. Yeah. Again, this was kind of what I alluded to earlier in this in this episode. We had the seriousness of the NWO, and that was such a kind of like shoot work angle in '96. It was really blurring the lines. It was very similar to what we would see in the WWF a little bit later with the Attitude Era. This was sort of such a kind of departure from what we had seen on weekly episodic wrestling with the NWO. And then we switch over to something like this, which is still very animated and cartoonish, something that is very much kind of in the realm of, 93, 94, 95 WCW, something that you'd sit and watch with a bowl of cereal as a 10-year-old type thing. Like this is very campy. So for the purposes of kind of amalgamating these all together, these matches, and then maybe doing a blow off and just getting rid of this angle, then I hope that's what you're doing. Then I'm okay with it.
Oh, it's 100% what I'm doing. It's just for lack of a better term, it's a squash. It's Harlem Heat beating the hell out of Jacques and Pierre, and then Sherry ends up getting the pin on Parker. That's what it is. It doesn't need to be anything else. But to go back to what you just said about how this is super cartoonish and kind of Saturday morning cartoon shit, well, it didn't have to be. If they had done this a little differently and pushed the envelope a little bit more and done the black tag team going up against the Southern potential racist Colonel Parker, you see where I'm going there? There definitely could have been a great storyline there if they had done it properly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I see where you're going with that, and I don't know if that's necessarily the direction I would have loved to have seen either. But at the same time, I think there's a happy medium in there. I think maybe we're at a point right now with both companies, both with WWF and WCW, that we were trying things. I mean, if you look at like Monday Night Raw, we were seeing things like Pillman's got a gun, and we're seeing Steve Austin start to rise in terms of his controversial attitude. But at the same time, on the same show, we would see Bart Gunn versus Salvatore Sincere. So if you look at this particular event, I mean, it's something of the same thing. We're going to see, the Outsiders, Hall and Nash. We're going to see Hogan, or at least their presence will be felt in terms of them being a part of the NWO. And then we're going to see something like this. So I think that both companies were a little bit trepidatious to go too far with this at this point. But with this particular angle, I do agree. If it was presented a little differently, it might have come off as a little bit more authentic, as opposed to kind of this silly. Yeah, I don't even really know how to describe it. It's just silly to me.
But at the same time, with maybe the exception of somehow PCO in 2021, can you ever really take the Quebecers seriously? They were always loud, obnoxious, brass, just annoying. And then you look at PCO in his 50s now, literally playing a robot, like thinks he's a robot. And it's the most realistic thing that he has ever fucking done. And it's mind blowing to me. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Colonel Robert Parker, a.k.a. Yosemite Sam, with the Harlem Heat, and with Sherry Martel, who was just a character of her own. Yes, this was a very, 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 very gimmick-heavy match. Well, all right, then I guess we'll move on to the next matchup that I have on the card, which again is a United.
I'm sorry about that. I was muted. My apologies.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that, to your point about PCO. I mean, yeah, he's committed to that character, but that's not that dissimilar from the Undertaker. I mean, the Undertaker gimmick or character on its face is ridiculous. He's a dead man. I mean, he wasn't originally a dead man. Originally, he was an Undertaker for an old kind of like Western town, but he evolved into the dead man. And so when you look at how committed Mark Calloway was to that character, he got it over because of the commitment level. Gimmicks themselves are many times awful, but many times the gimmicks, if the performer doesn't commit to them, is the reason why they fail. So your point about PCO is well taken, I think.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. But moving on. Next match, another first round United States tournament match. We have Double J, Jeff Jarrett, going one-on-one with Six Pac.
Okay, so very interesting. Well, he wasn't called Double J at this point. He was just Jeff Jarrett. But yeah, okay. So you have two Fed guys going at it, which is interesting. I mean, two former Fed guys. Jarrett had just come in not too long before this. I'm curious to see who you have go over here, because Six was part of the NWO. It makes sense to have an NWO member involved with the tournament, but are you gonna have Jarrett's jets cooled this quickly in terms of his momentum? I'm curious where you go with this.
So I do have Six go over, but it's because, again, I know I've done this a few times with screwy finishes this event, but it's my show. Suck my dick. The Giant comes out, takes out Jeff Jarrett while Six is distracting the referee. Six just gives him a quick little leg drop and a pin. Six moves on to the next round.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll take that. I mean, I think you can make a case that Jarrett, he wasn't going to lose his heat because he's involved with an NWO angle here. And the NWO, that's going to be the theme of the evening, I think, here in terms of talking about this show, is how hot the NWO was. So anything that they were involved with or touching was going to get that obligatory rub. So I feel like, for the purposes of having Jarrett at least involved sagely with the NWO, then I'm okay with that. That's okay with me.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you enjoy it. Let's move on now, shall we? The next match that I have is a triple threat match for the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. Because when I like my cruiserweights, I like them more the merrier. We have Dean Malenko defending against Psychosis and Juventud Guerrera.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's a cruiserweight heavy show in that regard. I am good with that. Again, I know that typically people are used to us having some contention with these cards, but just by virtue of me giving this card to Tyrone this week to rebook, I feel as though he was going to make chicken salad out of chicken shit here. So he's doing a pretty good job with all things considered. And yeah, triple threat or a triangle, I guess they used to call it in WCW and ECW, I believe. A triangle match for the Cruiserweight Championship makes all the sense here. Get some guys on here. It's a bit of a palate cleanser as well. It's the ebbs and flows like we've talked about so many times in terms of rebooking. So yeah, I'm fine with this. How do you have it going? Who's going over? Where are we? Where
Well,
are we going?
you've got the two great high flyers with Hoovy and Psychosis, and then you've got Dean Malenko, who is just such a technician, but also able to do some of the higher flyer stuff, being a smaller man. So I thought that it was kind of perfect that while Dean may be out taking a 2-minute outside, catching his breath, you get the high flyers, you get them doing all of the loop-de-loop flippity flops off the top rope. And then Malenko ends up coming in, putting somebody in the Texas Cloverleaf, getting the win, still your cruiserweight champion.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good with that. I like the idea of Malenko going over here, and I like the idea of possibly Malenko having a nice run with it. We talked about this on so many occasions that we're going into a season in wrestling here. Season, what I mean by that is an era in wrestling where hot shotting the title and turning the titles into hot potatoes was kind of the rule of the day. So I'm 100% fine with you having Dean Malenko go over here. And I hope that for the purposes of rebooking into say 97 and beyond, that we're going to get some more lengthy title reigns in terms of our booking, because I don't think that you have to hot potato a title to make it mean something or to elevate people. So for those purposes, I'm really happy that you had some title retention here.
Well, I mean, you can't have everybody lose their title every single time. That's just not cool. So yeah, Dean Malenko, fucking one of the greatest ever. We're gonna keep it on him. And if we have anything to say, Jay, maybe he'll hold it until he goes to the Fed in 2000. Fuck it, let's go on a real streak there.
Maybe so, and then he'll become that man of mystery with that James Bond, Jim Johnston classic.
Oh, I completely forgot all about that. But yeah, I remember that now. Anyway, we're going to move on to the final first round match in the United States title tournament. And going one-on-one, we have the enforcer, Arn Anderson, taking on the Giants.
Okay. Very interesting. I'm just trying to think here how I feel about this. The enforcer versus the Giant, eh? You know what? Just because I want to see. This was at a time when Paul White was moving around really well. He was in good shape. He was lean. He was mean. He was ready to contribute. Not to say he wasn't throughout the rest of his career, but at this point, he was so eager. I would love to see. This is a point where we're seeing the Giant. I'll never understand why he was doing this, but this was at a point where we were seeing the Giant literally go up to the top rope on a Nitro and deliver a drop kick to someone. So I would love to see the Giant get some air and land right into a spine buster by Double A. I don't even care if Arn goes over, but I want to see that spine buster. Are we going to see it?
Well, that's not going to happen. I can tell you that right now, because this match, as the Giant is heading to the ring, Jeff Jarrett comes from behind with a chair, lays him the fuck out. As that's happening, Nick Patrick tries to separate it, and because he's NWO, he doesn't want this match to happen. Then we get J.J. Dillon coming out and telling Nick Patrick to go to the back. The match is going to happen no matter what. So it takes Jeff Jarrett and Arn Anderson throwing Big Show into the ring with all their strength. Arn goes in. Arn goes to the second rope, does the patented Bret Hart fist from the second rope, the elbow fist from the second rope, and that's it. It's like a 10-second match because he cost Jarrett the match. Jarrett cost him the match. Arn Anderson moves on in the tournament.
Wow, I'm really surprised. I mean, I'm just surprised that you're spending so much pay-per-view time building this Jarrett Giant, the Jarrett Giant match. I mean, I'm not against it. I'm just surprised that you're spending so much time building into that. So it's good. It's good booking in that regard, that if you're going to go for it, then build some stakes. I would have liked to have seen maybe a bit of a competitive match between the Giant and Arn Anderson, but I understand your reasons for it, and I'm fine with Arn Anderson going over. So ultimately, then we would see the next match then on the tournament, if I'm not mistaken, would be Arn Anderson versus whom?
Six.
Okay, so and I like that match a lot. We had already seen some interaction between the NWO and the Four Horsemen at this point, so I like the idea of the Enforcer going up against Six, and that would be, we all talk about X-Pac heat. I think he's a hell of a worker, and it's impossible to deny Sean Waltman's skills. And of course, Arn Anderson is in a class by himself. So to see those two guys with the built-around story of the NWO versus the Horsemen, plus the U.S. title tournament, I think that'd be a hell of a match.
Yeah, and plus at this point, I can't remember. Jarrett was about to join the Horsemen around now anyway, wasn't he?
It was close to this time. I think it was maybe 90. It was the end of 96, early 97, when he actually got, indoctrinated into the faction. But it wouldn't last long. I don't remember the exact timeline. You'll have to pardon me.
All right, well, you're pardoned, sir. All right, we move on to the WCW Tag Team Championship match. Now, on the original card, you had the Outsiders defending against the Faces of Fear and everybody's favorite, the Nasty Boys, in a triple threat match. And this may shock you, Jay, but I genuinely liked this match, so I kept it the exact same. I thought that it was a hard-hitting, great, knockdown, drag-out fight between six of the toughest motherfuckers in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, the match itself wasn't the worst. I thought, for what it was, you weren't going to get much better. I mean, in terms of the competitors, yeah, it was just a big brawl. You had a bunch of brooding, large men in this match that were just going to be throwing bombs. And I think in terms of when you see this card as a whole, let's say you go on Wikipedia or what have you, and you check out what was the card for WCW 1996 World War III. This is the first match that stuck out to me, to be very honest. I mean, the Cruiserweight matches were quite good, and you have some good names there as well. But in terms of the match that kind of intrigued me the most in terms of seeing this card on paper, it was this match, and it didn't disappoint. I mean, it wasn't a 5-star classic. I hate to use that term 5-star because I'm not a fan of the person who created the ranking system. But in terms of it being, a Matt classic, it wasn't going to be a Matt classic. But did it serve its purpose? 100%. So I'm fine with you keeping it on here.
Yeah, and we all know I've done my fair share of shitting on Kevin Nash on this show, but it's a new season. I'm going to try and turn a new leaf and join the Kevin Nash fan club. I'm going to get my Super Shredder sweater out. I'm going to get my Magic Mike double XL water bottle, and we're just going to have a good time chilling and loving Kevin Nash this year, guys. How's that sound?
Well, listen to that, ladies and gentlemen. Tyrone for season 2 is going to turn a new leaf Cassidy, and he is going to become a fan of Kevin Nash. I love it.
I mean, they already call me Big Sexy at work, so I might as well pay a tribute to the man who came up with that name.
Is that the same group of people that call Vader the man they call Vader? So who's they? Is that the same people that call you sexy?
They say it all, baby. They say it all.
All right. Well, I believe they're referred to as the Peanut Gallery, and they are not here tonight. So I believe that brings us to our closing event, our closing match of this card. Unless you've got something else. I don't know what you've got here. I'm assuming we still have the Battle Royal. Why don't you talk me through the rest of the card here, bud?
So I legit was sitting there all day trying to think of a way that I could just completely scratch this event and not do 60-man Battle Royal. It was so stupid. But the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I was like, it's like if there was no Elimination Chamber in the WWE, like it had to be done. It was a yearly tradition that they did. So yeah, we are at the main event. We are at the 60-man over the top rope, 3-ring Battle Royal, where there are 20 men in each ring. And when you get down to 10 men in that ring, you need to move to another ring until everybody is finally just inside of one of the rings. Those are the actual rules. I am not making that up at all. That is what they stressed, and throughout the entire event, you could hear Tony Schiavone counting how many people were in the ring in front of him, and it always seemed to be 11, because they weren't ready in the other rings yet to get everybody in there together.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest with you. I didn't watch this match all the way through. I kind of watched the beginning. I watched fast forwarded to the middle, and then I got to the end. It was just too. It was, you know what I should do is for nights that I'm having insomnia or nights that I can't sleep, I should put on a World War III because it'll put me to sleep in probably about 10 minutes. I mean, this was
Trust me, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It just makes you angry, and then you're more awake.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. So I think we're going to spare our listening audience hearing every name that was involved in this match. Suffice it to say, it was who's that of WCW for the most part. And we had a very, very interesting kind of final run of people that were in towards the end. I'm curious to see, Tyrone, I'm assuming that you're going to book for us just kind of the closing moments of this show and this particular match just to bring us home. What do you have for us in terms of the booking of this match?
You're the one who fucked up and gave me this event. So you're going to sit back and listen as I list every one of the 60 participants in this event and how they get thrown out by whom in which ring until we get to where we need to be. I hope you're prepared for that.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. It's going to be a 4-hour podcast this week.
So, no, I'm not going to do that. That's fucking stupid. I'm going to pick it up right now with the final 6 in the ring. So, the final 6 are NWO members, Scott Hall, NWO member, Kevin Nash, NWO member, The Giant, the Total Package, Lex Luger, Diamond Dallas Page, who is playing that fun, what side is he on character at this point, and the number 6 person left in this battle royal is the one and only Eddie Guerrero.
Oh, of course.
So what happens is it's essentially Luger and Guerrero kind of teaming up against the NWO because Page is doing his whole kind of staying over to the side, not really getting involved. The NWO at this point, for those of you who didn't know, was seriously trying to recruit him to join them in storyline. And he was just kind of being that free agent, soaking up all the wonderful things that he's being given and being told. So he's just kind of there. So what happens is, heartburn. Nash has Eddie Guerrero. He's holding him, waiting for Hall to run against him. Eddie ducks. All of a sudden, Nash, first one out. I know that's a shocker right there. Kevin Nash is the first member of the NWO out after that classic move of Scott Hall missing the wrong guy and knocking Big Sexy over the top rope. Once that happens, Scott Hall is clearly upset that he had done that, letting Lex Luger run over and dump him out. Now we're down to Lex Luger, Eddie Guerrero, The Giant, and DDP. Can you see where I'm going with this, kids? Because I'm sure you can. Next up, it looks like it's DDP and The Giant teaming up against Eddie Guerrero and Luger. We look like we're going to get 2-on-2 when all of a sudden The Giant just says, screw it, and tosses DDP over the top rope. He is just an angry giant right now. He is going absolutely berserk. As he then sets his sights on Eddie Guerrero, he picks him up as he's got him over the top rope, about to toss him. Lex Luger grabs the Giant from behind, dumps him out. As he's doing that, Eddie Guerrero also hits the ground. Your winner of World War III. I thought it made more sense. The Total Package, Lex Luger.
Yeah, I mean that does make more sense to me. I mean, I think because of the way that they booked. I mean, they had Scott Hall win it originally, and then he was supposed to get the title shot. It sold out, and that didn't happen. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Scott Hall did, dude. Scott Hall did not win this one. The Giant did.
Oh, I'm sorry. You'll have to forgive me. My apologies. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself a year here. Yeah, you're right. So the Luger winning makes a lot more sense to me. Way more sense to me because then you're building up stakes. And again, talking about what we talked about at the top of the show, um, you want to build up the younger stars. Now, clearly, Luger wasn't a younger star at this point, but he was an established, homegrown WCW star. Yes, he had that run in the Federation that was lackluster, but all things considered, when you think of Lex Luger, you think of him, he's a WCW guy. So for me, it makes a lot more sense to build up to Luger and have Luger go on to face him, say, at Super Brawl than it would for the Giant to win it. It just builds up a lot more tension, a lot more stakes, and you can tell that story in terms of having Luger being the torchbearer for WCW going into '97. We were going to see on the 100th episode of Nitro Lex Luger win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship against Hulk Hogan, and then Hollywood Hogan, that is, and then have him lose it the 6 nights later or 5 nights later at the Road Wild pay-per-view. So I think that this makes so much sense, and I am so happy you did this. Great job, man. I'm actually really excited about this.
Well, and not to mention, yeah, you say that Luger gets the rub. He's not the younger star, but it makes sense. No, but Eddie Guerrero is kind of the rising star at this time, and to have him in there until the end, he looks like $1,000,000. Same with DDP, who is going to soon be the face of the company. We're building that up. It's planting the seeds to get these guys over in the future so that we're not stuck with Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior at fucking Halloween Havoc 98, hopefully.
Well, and I mean, we've talked about that so many times that we'll see if we get to that this year, Halloween Havoc 98, because I feel like there's a lot to be said about that. I feel like we're going to have to kind of judiciously book 1998 between the two of us to get to where I think we both think we should go for Halloween Havoc 98. But yeah, no, I understand exactly what you're saying. It's not actually dissimilar from what happened with us at Halloween Havoc 99 a couple of weeks ago, that you booked 99 Halloween Havoc and then Tyler came on as a guest and booked Mayhem, changing your booking quite a bit, which in the time frame of the latter part of 99 made a lot of sense. But I was really happy with the way you booked the Halloween Havoc 1999. So the way you booked this, I think it just sort of plants seeds going forward. I mean, especially if we know it's sort of akin to that Royal Rumble to Mania time frame. I mean, this to me was kind of the WCW's version of the Royal Rumble, obviously. I think people will deny that that's the case, but I do think that was sort of the inception of it. Let's do the Rumble, but let's make it 3 times bigger. More is not always more, folks. But if you're going to go to Super Brawl in February and you have this in December or in November, I am all for Luger with that slow burn going into Super Brawl. So yeah, good, man. I like this.
Yeah, I'm quite all right with it too. I mean, like I said, it was not a great card. I didn't have a lot to work with. Looking at even who was on the roster at the time, there were a lot of people, but there were a lot of people that you can't really plug into a pay-per-view feud. So, did what I could, threw that US title tournament in there just to get other guys on there, kind of take away the unnecessary contract signing that we had with Hogan and Piper, and also the really weird Jarrett Giant match that we had. I thought that I would keep that feud going, but then kind of pull some strings in other directions with other superstars. So yeah, I'm okay with what I did here. Are you ready to hear what you're doing next week?
I am indeed, sir. I am indeed.
Well, being that it's November and, wrestling, and in America it's Thanksgiving, I thought, why not give you the Thanksgiving Eve tradition of a WWF Survivor Series?
I like it.
I'm not going to give you 96 because you and I have both kind of spoken about how that is just almost the holy grail and we don't touch it. So I've decided to give you a fun little one. We're going to go back to, I believe, the Richmond Coliseum. I could be wrong, but we're going back to 1991. You're going to have to book Survivor Series 91 with that Hulk Hogan Undertaker title main event.
At the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit, Michigan. I like it. That is very exciting. This is actually low-key. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say 91 roster is fucking stacked too. So you have a lot to work with.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I'm excited to get my hands into 91. I feel like it made sense for us to go to 91 because we had done the Rumble, we had done Mania, we did SummerSlam, and now we're doing Survivor Series. So we're hitting all big four here. I like that a lot, and I have already some ideas. My thoughts are percolating here. My juices are starting to flow. I'm getting pretty excited because I have an idea of what I want to do here already in my head. It's been something I've been fantasy booking for a long time. And, this is a really, really good Survivor Series. Just to talk about Survivor Series on its face for a minute, we were talking, as alluded to earlier in our conversation today, about that text group message that we had last night, actually. And I have to say, I've watched a couple of Survivor Series events in the last week or 10 days just to prepare for Survivor Series. I don't even know if I'm going to watch this year's Survivor Series, but 88. I watched 88, and I started to sit there as I was watching it. Was this the first time I've ever seen this? I don't remember ever seeing it before. I know it's not the first time, but holy cow, was it ever a good Survivor Series? It was underrated. I never hear people talk about 88, and it was a really good Survivor Series. Do you remember it?
I remember. All I really remember about it, correct me if I'm wrong, but Coco Beware and Hillbilly Jim are on Hulk Hogan's team.
Yes, they are. And it's a weird.
But is there another one of those convoluted, like, fucking 16-man tag team matches on this one?
There was, but it was actually really good. It was really, really well booked and well orchestrated. They didn't make a meal of it, which was really nice. So they would eliminate guys, and it came down to about an eight man tag at one point fairly quickly. So it was convoluted, obviously, but I don't know. I really, really enjoyed this particular Survivor Series. If you haven't gone out there, folks, for those of you listening to this podcast, I know a lot of you are older wrestling fans like myself and Tyrone, but for somebody who's listening that maybe isn't that up on some of the more nostalgic wrestling events, maybe past, say, the Attitude Era, and they haven't gone back to watch some of the events from the late 80s and early 90s, I strongly suggest to prepare yourself for Survivor Series. Go out of your way to check out at least some of Survivor Series 88. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And if you want to talk about seeds being planted and stories being told, just watch that main event and remember what we're going to see at WrestleMania 5. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Lust in your eyes, brother. There's lust in your eyes.
Yeah, it was, I think it's a funny thing for me because I'm always such a mark for the new generation. And that's what people kind of think is my calling card. I love all eras of wrestling, except maybe, the last couple of years of WWE is not my favorite. That's another story for another day. But I think the older I get, the more and more I appreciate 80s and early 90s wrestling. I've always loved it, but there's a part of me that loves it even more. It's almost like a fine wine with me. It's aging so nicely. I'd love to go back and watch that old, late 80s and early 90s presentation. And to me, with 96 being the obvious exception, every time I think of Survivor Series and I think about, if I want to celebrate an American Thanksgiving with a plate of turkey dinner, even though we're Canadian, if I want to celebrate American Thanksgiving and think about what it's like to watch Survivor Series, I'm always going to put on one of those first 4 or 5 of them. I'm not going to go much past 91 or 92 at the most. 96 obviously being my favorite, but Do you agree with me, Tyrone, that back in the day when we just had the straight tag matches, the 88s, the 89s, the 90s, that to me was a sweet spot for Survivor Series.
Oh, 100%. I also love the random pairings of people you would get, the names of the teams. Like, I'm trying to think right now. I'm pretty sure that there was one called like the Visionaires at some point. It was Rick Martel, the Warlord, like just maybe Paul Roma and Hercules. Like, it was just a really, really, really random pairing of men, but it always worked out. And they would also do weird things like the Rockers were a tag team, but yet Shawn Michaels is going to be on one team. Marty Jannetty is going to be on another. Why? We don't really know. It just happened. Why was Boris Zukov on one team and Nikolai Volkov on the other? Again, not sure, but didn't really question it. Just let it happen.
Yeah, that's so true. They would break up tag teams and put them in separate. Yeah, that is awesome. And then we had that. Was it 90 or was it 89? I think it was 89 when we got the survivors of the team.
The ultimate survival match. Yeah.
Yes. That was so fun.
That was 90, I believe, because it was Tito, Warrior, and Hogan versus, oh fuck, I want to say DiBiase, Power and Glory, Warlord, and I think one other guy. I think it was a 5-on-3 situation.
Yeah, I think for me, like 91 was probably the last, again, with the exception being 96 for me. I think 91 for me was like the last really, really solid, this is what Survivor Series is supposed to be all about kind of event. I mean, we had some of those elimination tags in the Attitude Era as well, and of course in the Ruthless Aggression Era, but there's something about that golden age, the first few years of it, it'll just never get topped. So anyway, we're waxing nostalgic about Survivor Series. I am pumped up for next week. I am so excited to talk about that and to rebook that. I have some ideas in my mind. Tyrone, where can our listening audience find us on social?
On Twitter at good_enemies, Facebook, Good Friends Better Enemies Podcast, on Instagram at good_enemies, and for all things you need to know about Jay, myself, Mike, Tyler, the entire Counted Out 7 universe, you go to countedout7.com there, friends and family.
110%. And for myself, for Tyrone, for next week's booking of Survivor Series 1991, for this week's booking, rather easy for me to say, season 2, episode 1. Wow, I can't talk. I need to have a cup of coffee. Season 2, episode 1 of Tyrone's booking of WCW World War III, 1996. For all those reasons and the fact that we are back and ready to attack, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Good Friends Better Enemies podcast.
Bye. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody in the States.
Trust me.